The Galactic Union had always watched Earth with quiet concern, uncertain whether the strange and emotional species called humans could ever fit into the orderly structure of the greater galaxy. And when Earth finally asked for full membership, the Union Council agreed. But not honestly. They arranged a secret test, hidden under the name of a peaceful exploration mission, and selected 5 humans, each skilled and trained for deep space diplomacy, to be sent to a beautiful but mysterious planet called Zeros 9, which was actually a classified Class-15 death world, a place so dangerous that no other known species had ever returned from it alive, with its shifting climates, unstable gravity fields, and unpredictable life forms. The goal was simple: observe how the humans would fail, and use it as a reason to deny Earth's place among the stars. But from the moment the humans landed, something began to go differently than planned, as Captain Elias Ward, the leader, noticed their navigation systems had scrambled coordinates and realized their landing site was nowhere near the expected research zone. While technician Carla Jong scanned the environment and whispered that the atmospheric data didn't match any known profiles on the Union's approved planet list, and the air, though harsh, was breathable, the wildlife aggressive but cautious, the storms strange but beautiful. Instead of panicking, the humans took inventory, worked together, and began building a shelter from their damaged ship's remains, while the Union, watching through hidden satellites, waited for the moment things would spiral. But it never came. Instead, Dr. Mara Singh found strange mineral samples that reacted to thought, and Lieutenant James Halder used them to power makeshift tools, while biologist Liana Reyes charted plant life that responded to gentle human touch. It was supposed to be a death sentence, but the planet seemed curious rather than hostile, and as days passed, the climate began to adjust around the human camp in subtle ways. The winds grew calmer, the creatures stopped attacking, and even the stars above seemed to shine clearer at night. Elias, uneasy but alert, noticed that the camp's perimeter was always undisturbed in the morning, like something was protecting them from deeper threats they hadn't seen yet. And one evening, while exploring the ridge beyond the camp, they discovered what looked like ruins buried in stone, ancient, massive, and humming faintly with unknown energy. Mara was the first to touch the stone walls, and when she did, the ground vibrated, a soft light flickered, and a hum traveled through their minds like a distant song that had no words but still felt familiar, as if the planet had been waiting for them, expecting them. Back in orbit, Union observers began arguing among themselves. Why hadn't the humans been wiped out, and why was the planet stabilizing? Because Class-15 death worlds didn't evolve to protect invaders. They destroyed them. Yet here, the humans were not only surviving, they were thriving, adapting faster than any species before them. Within a week, the humans had built water collectors, temperature shields, and even a small lab to study the ruins. And the plant life had begun forming unusual shapes near the camp, as if drawn by human presence. Liana noted one evening that the same blue vines she'd catalogued days ago were now forming patterns in the sand, shapes that resembled symbols, possibly a language, possibly communication. And then came the storm. Not the ordinary storms they had seen earlier, but something vast and powerful that seemed to come from every direction at once. A black wall of lightning and ash moving like a beast with purpose. And as the humans scrambled to activate the energy shields they'd built, they noticed something impossible. The storm split before reaching them, circling around the camp like a tide meeting a rock. The winds screaming past them without touching the central zone where they stood. Elias and the others stood in silence, staring at the impossible event, and it was then that the idea took root in their minds. This wasn't just survival anymore, and this wasn't just a test, because something on Zeros 9 was watching them, learning from them, and maybe even helping them. They hadn't been abandoned to die. They had been invited into something old, something forgotten, and as the storm faded and the light returned, the 5 humans stood at the edge of the strange stone ruins, staring at a door that hadn't been there the day before, a smooth, seamless entry now revealed by the shifting sand, humming with power and covered in the same symbols the plants had been drawing. And without a word, Elias stepped forward, placing his hand against it. It lit up instantly, and deep beneath the surface, something woke up, something that hadn't moved in thousands of years, something that was not entirely machine and not entirely alive, but waiting for a kind of mind that only humans seemed to possess, curious, emotional, stubborn, and unafraid of the unknown. And while the Union still believed this was a failed mission heading toward its inevitable end, they didn't yet realize that the test had already failed. Not because the humans were weak, but because the test itself couldn't contain what humanity was becoming on a planet that now seemed to be waking up just for them. The door beneath the sand opened with a soft sound, like a whisper of old wind through metal leaves, and as Elias stepped inside, followed closely by Mara, Carla, James, and Liana, the air grew cooler and filled with a faint glow from the walls, which pulsed gently with soft blue veins of energy that moved like rivers under glass. The passage curved downward, and with every step, the ground beneath their feet seemed to adjust to their weight, almost guiding them as if the planet had been preparing for their arrival for a very long time. And in the silence of that underground space, the 5 humans felt something they couldn't explain, like they were not alone, like something was watching them from beyond the walls, not with eyes, but with awareness. Above them, in orbit, Union observers continued to monitor with growing unease because the planet's energy readings had changed dramatically, and satellite sensors picked up new heat signatures and light patterns that formed symbols even the oldest Union archives couldn't decode. And worse, the humans showed no signs of fear or stress. They were calm, organized, curious, and still alive. Inside the underground chamber, Mara discovered ancient carvings in a language that did not match any alien script, yet somehow felt oddly familiar, like it had been seen in human dreams or myths. And as she touched them, the wall brightened and projected a map of the planet, showing not just terrain, but buried cities, power lines, and core pathways that spiraled down to the heart of Zeros 9. Suddenly, a gentle hum echoed around them and the map flickered, showing images, ancient, unclear visions of tall beings with glowing skin, guiding the growth of the planet, planting forests that could think, raising creatures that could learn from thought. And then a great silence as those beings vanished, leaving their world asleep and waiting. Elias realized this planet had once been alive in a very different way, not just with animals and trees, but with purpose, a kind of deep intelligence tied to everything around them. And now something about the humans had begun to wake it up. Back on the surface, strange things began to happen. The plants near their camp started forming paths, curling into trails that led directly to fresh water, while creatures that once hid now came close, sitting silently as if listening. And the weather, once chaotic, became steady and mild around the camp, though harsh storms still raged far beyond it. James noticed that their equipment, which had run out of power, now worked again when left near certain crystals gathered from the underground ruins, and Carla used this energy to repair their long-range comms, though every attempt to send a message was blocked by a strange interference that no one could explain. Meanwhile, Liana found a small creature, shaped like a bird but with shimmering skin and 4 eyes, mimicking her movements, copying the way she walked and tilted her head. And when she laughed, it echoed her sound exactly, as if it was learning. Emotions. The humans began to suspect that everything around them was observing and responding, not just with instinct, but with intention. The planet itself seemed to be listening, watching, and learning from every word, every act of kindness, every spark of curiosity. And the more the humans explored, the more the land shifted to meet them, offering clues, revealing hidden doors, and protecting them from danger. One night, Mara stayed up late studying the map inside the ruins and discovered a flashing signal deep beneath the surface, a steady pulse like a heartbeat. And when she showed it to Elias, he decided they needed to go there, to reach the source and understand what this planet truly was. They planned their journey carefully, packing food, water, and tools, and leaving a beacon in case help ever came, though they knew by now that no one was coming. And maybe that was for the best, because something told them this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about being chosen. As they moved out, guided by the glowing trails left by the planet, the Union satellites detected seismic activity beneath the humans' position, but it wasn't destructive. Instead, the data showed controlled motion, like something was clearing a path. And even though the Council ordered a blackout on further observation, a few curious scientists continued to watch in secret, unable to look away as the impossible unfolded. Deep underground, the humans reached a chamber where the walls pulsed like breathing, and in the center stood a tall pillar, humming softly, covered in the same symbols they had seen before. And as they approached, it began to change, forming human shapes in light, copies of the 5 explorers standing still, waiting, glowing faintly. Elias stepped forward, and the shapes moved in sync with them, reflecting their actions not like a mirror, but like a memory coming to life. And suddenly a voice, gentle, musical, without any known language, filled the chamber, not through sound, but directly in their minds, sending feelings and images, sorrow, waiting, hope, and then a clear message that echoed in every human heart present: you are seen. The planet was watching, yes, but not as a hunter watches prey. It was watching like a teacher watches students, like a guardian testing those who might one day protect something much greater. And as the voice faded, the light within the pillar turned golden, and from the walls, panels opened to reveal ancient tools, strange and elegant, and yet shaped to fit human hands as if they had been made for them long ago. Outside, the sky flickered as a storm passed, but over the human camp, not a single drop of rain fell, and the creatures gathered at the edges, sitting quietly as if awaiting instructions. The death world, once a place of chaos and danger, now behaved like a sentient host, welcoming back long-lost friends. And above it all, the humans walked deeper into the heart of the world, unaware that their actions were being recorded not just by alien satellites, but by the planet's memory itself, feeding knowledge into systems that had slept for millennia, preparing for something yet to come. And far away, across the stars, the Union Council received a quiet warning from one of their own scientists who had broken the silence, a single phrase encoded in urgency: the humans are not just surviving, the planet is waking up, and it is waking for them. The deeper the humans went into the glowing tunnels beneath Zeros 9, the more they felt the planet changing around them, not just physically, but in a way that touched their thoughts, like the ground itself was alive. And listening, and with every step it grew more aware. Elias led the way, holding one of the ancient tools they had found earlier, a long device that responded to thought by projecting light in any direction he focused on. And behind him walked Mara, Carla, James, and Liana, all silent, not because of fear, but because the air felt sacred, like speaking out loud would disturb something old and important. And as they passed through archways of smooth stone and glass-like metal, they entered a wide chamber filled with floating orbs of light that moved slowly, like stars caught in slow motion. And when the team stepped inside, the orbs gently moved toward them and surrounded them, casting soft reflections on the walls that flickered with images from Earth, trees, cities, oceans, and even faces from their pasts, things that no one on this planet should have known. And Mara whispered that this was memory, not their own, but taken from them, gently copied, like the planet had been studying them since their arrival and was now showing them how much it had learned. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet rumbled, not with violence, but like something massive was shifting far below, and new tunnels opened silently in the walls, one leading deeper underground, and Elias decided to follow it, driven not by orders, but by instinct, feeling that whatever waited at the bottom was meant for them. Above the surface, the camp they had built remained peaceful, but the animals and plants behaved in strange ways, moving in patterns, forming shapes, even arranging small objects around the camp in spiral formations. And though there were no obvious threats, the entire area pulsed with a strange tension, as if the planet was holding its breath. Back underground, the team reached a place unlike any they had seen before. A circular room with a tall column in the center, surrounded by thin strands of crystal that vibrated when they spoke. And when Elias placed his hand on the column, the walls lit up with scenes from the distant past, showing tall beings who had built the planet, not as a home, but as a test, a place where intelligence would be measured not by power, but by behavior, by cooperation, by the ability to learn and live with the unknown. Those builders, long gone, had created Zeros 9 to protect something deep in the galaxy, and the planet had been asleep, waiting for a species capable of passing its trial. And now, the planet believed it had found one. The column began to hum, and lights spread through the floor, racing like rivers of gold, down long invisible paths to other parts of the world, and miles away. Mountains began to shift, forests rearranged themselves, and old structures rose. From the ground like they had never left, slowly waking from slumber, Carla, watching the display, realized the planet wasn't just reacting. It was preparing for something bigger, reactivating its systems, rebuilding old defenses and spreading its awareness across the land. Back in orbit, the Union's hidden observation ship picked up all the changes, and the crew on board panicked as their sensors showed power levels rising to levels not seen in thousands of years. And when they tried to send a warning to Union Command, their signal was blocked. Not by jamming, but by the planet itself, which now controlled the magnetic field and prevented any communication it did not approve. Dr. Vella, the lead alien scientist on board, stared at the readings and whispered that the planet was no longer dormant, that it had fully awakened, and not only did it know the humans were there, it had accepted them, perhaps even chosen them. On the surface, the human camp began to transform, not by human hands, but by the planet's will, as vines grew into shelters, stones arranged themselves into tables and seats, and pools of clear water formed near their food supplies. And though it was unnatural, it was never threatening. It was as if the world was trying to help, to support, to welcome. Liana stood outside the main shelter one evening and noticed a group of glowing creatures sitting in a circle beyond the edge of camp, all facing the humans, unmoving, watching. And when she approached slowly, they didn't flee. They simply blinked, in perfect sync, and then faded into the trees like mist. The humans now knew they were not alone in the usual sense, not watched by cameras or drones, but by a living intelligence spread across every blade of grass, every drop of water, and every gust of wind. Back underground, Mara studied the symbols glowing along the walls and realized that each symbol changed based on their emotions, as if the walls were reading them, understanding them, adapting to them. And when she felt fear, the light dimmed. But when she thought of curiosity and hope, it brightened, and the symbols expanded into patterns that showed new paths. Eventually, they reached the lowest point of the chamber, a room shaped like a sphere, with no corners, only light and sound, and in the center hovered a single sphere of golden energy, pulsing gently, surrounded by a ring of floating objects that looked like stars held in place by invisible threads. And when Elias reached out, the sphere opened like a flower, revealing a small core that projected a new image, one of a great darkness spreading across space, consuming light, and then the image of humans, small but standing against it, protected by the energy of Zeros 9 and others like it, as if the planet was showing them their future role. This was no longer about survival, it was about purpose, and the planet was choosing humanity not because they were strong, but because they were something more. They were adaptable, emotional, curious, and above all, unafraid to try. And the world had seen that in them. As they stood in the sphere chamber, the energy around them pulsed again. And for the first time, the humans felt the planet speaking, not in words, but in feeling, sending a wave of warmth, of welcome, and of warning, telling them that time was short, that others would come, not all friendly, and that the humans had to prepare because what was waking on Zeros 9 would echo across the stars and draw attention, both good and bad. Elias turned to the others and said they had a choice to make. Either return to the surface and wait for the Union to arrive, or stay and finish what had begun, help the planet wake fully and uncover whatever secrets it still held. And without hesitation, every member of the team agreed to stay, for they knew deep in their hearts that this place, this forgotten world, had called to them for a reason, and now that it was awake, it would not go back to sleep. Deep in the glowing heart of Zeros 9, the humans stood in silence as the golden sphere hovered before them, its gentle light pulsing like a heartbeat in the dim chamber. And though no sound filled the air, each of them felt the same strange sensation inside their minds. A voice, not loud but clear, not in words but in feelings, like thoughts painted with emotion. And the planet was speaking at last. Elias closed his eyes, trying to focus, and in that moment he saw visions flash across his mind, of great machines buried deep in the crust, of storms swirling around the edges of the world, and of an ancient war fought in the stars far above, where light and shadow clashed in silence. And from that war came ruin, and from ruin came silence, and now that silence was ending. Mara felt it too, like a memory not her own, the sadness of being left behind, of waiting through centuries of quiet, of hoping someone would come who could understand, and then the strange joy of meeting the humans, like the planet had finally found someone who could hear it. Carla, more skeptical than the others, tried to resist the strange thoughts pressing into her mind, but even she could not ignore what she saw. Her own childhood memories replayed with perfect clarity, her hopes and fears understood by something, ancient and vast, and then replaced by images of people she had never met, other explorers, long gone, who had come before but failed, each one judged by the planet and turned away or lost in its depths, and now only 5 remained, and they had been accepted. James studied the floating orbs around the chamber, each one showing a piece of another world, and he realized the planet had stored knowledge from every visitor across millennia, learning, watching, waiting, and now it had enough. Now it was ready to speak, and not just with visions. This time it wanted to connect. Liana stepped toward the golden sphere and reached out, and as her fingers brushed the surface, the world around them changed. The chamber dissolved into a wide field beneath a night sky filled with stars, and they were standing on soft grass, with wind blowing gently, though they were still deep underground, and in front of them stood a tall figure of light, shaped like a human, but made of glowing threads. And when it opened its mouth, no sound came, but every human heard its voice. Clearly inside their minds, "You hear me now." It was the voice of the planet, the true mind behind the storms, the forests, the mountains, and the shifting stones, and it told them its story, of how it had been made by a race now gone, designed to protect a hidden secret deep within its core, a power not meant to be used unless the galaxy faced a darkness worse than war, a hunger that devoured stars and silenced worlds. And now the darkness was moving again, drawn by the faint signals of Zeros 9 awakening, and the planet needed guardians, not rulers, not invaders, but those who could feel and think and choose. And only humans had passed the tests. The vision shifted, and the humans saw themselves not just as explorers, but as bridges between two worlds, one ancient and one new. And then the vision changed again, showing Union fleets approaching, guided by greed and fear, with plans to claim the planet and strip it of its secrets, not knowing that the world would not allow it. Elias asked what the planet wanted from them, and the voice answered, to learn, to teach, to prepare. And with those words, the light figure pointed to the sky, where lines of energy formed shapes, blueprints, symbols and tools, knowledge, far beyond Earth's current level, but shaped in a way they could understand and use. And the voice said that the knowledge must be earned, not given all at once, and each gift would come with a test, because power without wisdom was the same as destruction. As the vision faded, the chamber returned, and the sphere slowly dimmed, leaving behind 5 smaller crystals, one for each of them, glowing with gentle light, and the voice said these were keys, linked to the planet's mind, able to connect with its systems, to guide and protect, and to be used only when truly needed. The humans took them carefully, feeling their warmth, and understood they were no longer just guests, but something more, chosen stewards of a sleeping giant. Above ground the camp had transformed again, now with gardens growing food, shelters that repaired themselves, and even tools shaped by vines and stone. And nearby, the creatures of the forest had begun to gather in larger numbers, moving in organized patterns, as if waiting for commands. The Union ship above finally broke silence, sending a signal demanding a report, but when it tried to scan the planet again, its systems failed, and a wave of static fried its instruments, forcing it to pull back. And in the darkness of space, the captain began to understand that this was no ordinary world. Back underground, Mara used her crystal to open a new path, one that led to a glowing library of floating shapes, each one a book of light that told a story, and there they saw visions of other worlds built like Zeros 9, planets scattered across the stars, each guarding a piece of the same secret, and the voice whispered, "You are not alone." Not just speaking of the planet, but of others like it, still silent, still waiting. James wondered what would happen when the Union arrived in force, and the voice replied, "They will be judged." And though it said no more, the meaning was clear. This world had rules, and only those who respected life, curiosity, and balance would be welcomed. That night, as the 5 sat around a soft fire in their camp, watching stars through a clear patch in the forest ceiling, they knew their lives had changed forever. They had come to study a deadly world, but instead had found something far greater, a living intelligence that saw them not as enemies, but as hope. And in return, they had been given a responsibility that stretched far beyond Earth. In the quiet moments before sleep, Elias held his crystal and whispered a promise to protect, to learn, and to listen. And though no voice answered, the trees above rustled gently, and the wind carried a soft sound like a distant hum, as if the planet had heard and accepted. And somewhere deep below, the heart of Zeros 9 glowed brighter, preparing for what was coming next. High above the glowing forests of Zeros 9, the Union fleet finally arrived in full force, 6 massive starships cutting through the clouds like blades of steel, their engines humming with power and their weapons charged, ready for anything. But what they did not know was that the planet had already awakened and was watching, and the humans they had sent as a simple test had become something much more. On the command deck of the lead ship, Admiral Keln stood tall, his face cold and focused, staring at the growing structures on the surface through a wide display screen. And when he saw the strange lights, the organized animal movements, and The massive crystalline towers rising from the trees, he assumed that some hostile species had taken control, unaware that these were the planet's gifts to the humans below. He ordered a full scan, but the moment their sensors touched the surface, the data twisted into static. The screens blinked, and the ship trembled slightly, as if the planet had pushed back. And in the confusion, the Admiral barked for a scout team to be launched. 3 sleek dropships fell from orbit, cutting through the atmosphere, heading for the area near the original human camp. And on the ground, Elias, Mara, Carla, James, and Liana stood ready, their crystals glowing softly, each of them connected. Now to the planet's awareness, and they could feel the dropships before they even saw them, like a ripple in calm water, and the voice of the planet whispered a warning, not in fear, but in caution, that this moment would test not only the Union, but the humans themselves. The ships landed with a hiss of steam, and out marched a dozen soldiers in heavy suits, weapons raised, followed by a science officer and a commander. And when they saw the 5 humans, they paused in confusion, unsure how these explorers had survived for weeks in a place marked as a Class-15 death world, one that should have killed them in hours. Elias stepped forward and raised a hand, speaking calmly, explaining that they were fine, that the planet had accepted them, that something had changed. But the commander only laughed and said he was here to secure the site and begin extraction of both the team and whatever technology they had uncovered. Mara tried to warn him that the planet was alive, that it would not allow anyone to harm it, but the commander waved her off and ordered his men to move in and take control. The moment one of the soldiers fired a scanner beam at one of the crystal towers, the ground trembled and vines shot up from the earth, gently but firmly blocking the beam. And when one soldier fired his weapon, the blast vanished in mid-air, swallowed by a sudden wall of energy that had not been there a moment before. The commander yelled for backup, but his voice faded into static, his comms jammed, and the wind picked up, swirling around the camp, carrying strange whispers that made the soldiers turn in fear, weapons shaking in their hands. James stepped between the Union soldiers and the nearest structure, holding his glowing crystal up high, and as he did, the wind stopped, and the vines retreated slightly, as if the planet was listening to him, waiting. He told the commander, again, this planet was not a thing to be controlled. It was alive, and it had chosen to help the humans, but it would not allow violence, not anymore. The commander sneered and tried to take the crystal from James, but the moment he touched it, his arm went numb, and he stumbled back, eyes wide with fear, as visions of fire, war, and silence filled his mind, and the voice spoke only to him, showing him a galaxy where worlds had died because of greed, and where those who ignored the warnings paid the price. He collapsed to the ground, gasping, and for a brief moment the soldiers around him hesitated, unsure what had just happened. And then the crystal towers began to hum, and beams of soft light connected them to the 5 humans, lifting them gently into the air, and for the first time the soldiers saw what the planet had made them into, not just explorers, but conduits of knowledge, of peace, of power shaped by harmony, and not a single weapon could match that. In orbit, Admiral Keln watched all of this in confusion and anger, demanding answers. But when no signal came back, he made his mistake. He ordered a warning shot, a blast from the main ship's cannon aimed not to destroy, but to frighten. And as the bright beam fell from the sky, it neared the forest edge. But before it could land, the ground split open, and a massive crystal rose from the surface, intercepting the blast and absorbing it completely, sending ripples of energy across the land, and a deep hum rolled through the air like a drumbeat from the planet's core. The voice spoke again, this time across all channels, not in a language of sound, but in pure thought, projected into the minds of every human, every soldier, and even the Admiral himself, and it said only one thing: no more. Across the forest, trees shimmered and shifted, revealing tall statues of unknown beings. the ones who had built the world, and from their hands came glowing streams of light that flowed across the land and into the sky, creating a barrier around the entire planet, a shield not made of metal but of will and memory, and the fleet's weapons powered down without command, their systems overridden, and Admiral Keln stared in disbelief as his flagship turned dark. His controls locked, and the planet sent him a message, showing him his own past, his own ambitions, his choices, and where they would lead if left unchecked. He saw not a threat below, but a mirror held up to his own kind. And for the first time, he felt small. Back on the ground, the 5 humans were lowered gently to the earth, and the Union soldiers, no longer hostile, simply watched in silence as the structures around them continued to grow, forming schools, gardens, and places of learning, not for war, but for something greater. And the voice explained that the planet had waited long enough, and now that it had been awakened, it would guide those willing to listen. But it would not be used, and the Union had to choose, step back, and learn or be locked out forever. Shaken, the commander nodded and ordered his men to stand down, and as the planet slowly relaxed, the barrier around the sky held strong, a quiet message to anyone watching from beyond. This world is protected. As the Union fleet drifted in silence, the Admiral made a choice no one expected. He opened a channel to Earth, not to request reinforcements, but to report the truth, that the planet was more than it seemed, that the humans they had sent had done something no one else had, earned the trust of something older and wiser than the stars, and that this world could be the key to a future built not on conquest, but on cooperation. And in the weeks that followed, more ships arrived, not with weapons, but with scientists, thinkers, and diplomats, all under the watchful eyes of the 5 humans who now served as the planet's first guardians, chosen not for strength, but for understanding. And as Zeros 9 bloomed around them, alive with color, sound, and new growth, the Union finally realized their mistake. They had thought they were in control, but in truth, they had been tested. And only now, after facing their own reflection, could they begin to grow. The sun rose slowly over Zeros 9, its light slipping through the crystal trees like golden threads, casting long shadows on the soft ground as the humans walked through the newly formed paths of the living forest, paths that had not been there days ago, yet now stretched like veins across the land, glowing faintly with warmth and energy, and the planet felt more alive than ever before, not just reacting but reaching out, growing toward something greater. Elias paused at a gentle stream that whispered as it moved, the water shaped perfectly by stone and moss, not carved by chance but arranged by intention, and he realized once more that the planet wasn't just alive, it was aware, and every root, breeze, and ripple was part of a vast mind that now watched over them with something like care. Since the Union's mistake, things had changed quickly. No more dropships with weapons, no more commands from orbit, just quiet voices and thoughtful eyes, as Earth and the Union Council began to understand that this was not a world to conquer, but a teacher that had chosen to trust 5 ordinary humans with something extraordinary. Mara stood beside a garden that had appeared overnight, filled with glowing fruits and vines that hummed softly. And when she touched one, it opened to reveal seeds wrapped in silver threads, gifts meant to be taken back to Earth, but only if used with purpose. James worked in the new structures that rose from the ground like glass temples, shaping data with thought and learning more each day about the technology hidden within the world's memory, ancient knowledge stored in light and air, and still the voice spoke to them, not in constant chatter, but in guidance, gentle hints, moments of connection when their hearts were open and their minds calm. Carla, once skeptical, had become the one most deeply bonded to the planet, able to sense changes before they happened, feeling the moods of the land like ripples of emotion. And she said that Zeros 9 was testing itself too, slowly opening pieces. of its vast intelligence, watching how the humans responded, and when they listened, it gave more. Liana spent her days exploring the tunnels below, where lights danced on the walls and echoes held old songs, and in one chamber she found a message carved into smooth crystal. Not by machines, but by hand, a human hand from long ago, one of the lost explorers who had vanished before them, and somehow this person had survived long enough to write, "This world is waiting for someone who sees." And now the planet had found not one, but 5. Above them, in the sky that once held warships, floated peace beacons sent by Earth, glowing slowly with color, a signal to the stars that the planet was off limits to harm and open only to learning. And though not everyone agreed back home, most now saw the truth. The humans had been changed, not by force, but by understanding, and that was something no weapon could create. But then, something strange began. Subtle at first, a shift in the stars, a soft hum that grew deeper each night, and the voice warned them that something was coming, not from the Union, but from the darkness beyond the galaxy. A silence that ate everything. The same ancient threat that had once caused the planet's creators to build Zero's 9 as a final shield, and now that shield had activated because it sensed that hunger again. The humans gathered with the scientists and observers in the Crystal Hall, where the planet showed them visions, black shapes drifting across the stars, worlds gone dark, and a whispering emptiness that grew louder with each passing day. And the voice said simply, "It comes again." Elias asked what could be done, and the voice showed them the answer. Not a weapon, but a link, a connection of minds and hearts across distance, something only humans had the potential to create. And with the crystals they had been given, they could awaken other sleeping planets like Zeros 9, guardians lost in silence, waiting to be heard. The 5 were chosen once more, not as warriors, but as seeds meant to travel outward, carrying with them the memory of the world that chose humanity. And each of them would go in a different direction, guided by the knowledge they now held, their minds shaped by the planet's trust. Farewell came quickly but gently. The ground gave them ships not made of metal, but of living light, grown from the soil, shaped by thought, and powered by the bond they now shared with Zeros 9. And when they stepped aboard, the ships responded like old friends, ready to follow wherever they led. As the 5 left, rising into the sky, the planet sang, not a song of sadness but of promise, a hum that filled the air and wrapped around every tree and stone, and those left behind watched with wide eyes as beams of light followed each ship into the stars, carrying not just people but a message, that even in a galaxy full of danger, there was still hope, and it had begun on a death world. The voice spoke one last time to all who listened, saying, "Humanity has heard me, and I have heard them." And with that, the planet glowed brighter, its forests pulsing like a heart, its rivers singing with wind, and somewhere deep below, in the oldest chamber of all, a new seed opened, one meant for the future, when others would come seeking answers, and the memory of the first 5 would guide them. Far away, Elias looked out the window of his living ship as stars passed by, and he felt the hum of the planet in his bones, a soft reminder that he was never truly alone. And he whispered to the stars, "We'll wake them all," knowing that Zeros 9 had given them not just a second chance, but the first real step towards something greater than survival, true understanding between world and mind. And in that moment, across the cold silence of space, the death world that once tried to kill them became the world that gave life to their greatest journey.